This is part 2 of the JRGP corresponding circuits. If you haven't seen part 1 yet, that's linked in the description, as will all other side mentions in this video. But anyway, this video covers bubble and fiery submission to the contest. Ên²ü². About a year ago, I released a video about a language whose name is ʟᴇsʍoʟ. If you've seen that, you may have been wondering what has happened to ʟᴇsʍoʟ and its speaker since then. If you are such, then you've come to the right place, because this video is about how ʟᴇsʍoʟ as a language died, and what language the ʟᴇsʍoʟ community came to adopt instead. And thus this video will be akin to the 2:1 in structure. So first off is the phonological evolution. Here is the phonology of ʟᴇsʍoʟ. As a translation process that defines ʟᴇsʍoʟ unravels, the Morse code is deconverted back into English and Ên²ü², and then the English strata is dropped, and the plural marking circumfix, and all the other weird fillings with it, leaving only the Ên²ü² and Mandarin strata, and thus the basis for a variety of Ên² with heavy Mandarin influence. For reference, let's look at the phonology of archaic Ên², as that's the stage of Ên² that ʟᴇsʍoʟ incorporated, and thus forms the basic, forms the starting point for Ên²'s phonology. 13 consonants, 6 vowels, and a consonant vowel optional consonant syllable structure. Now that we have a starting point, there's one caveat I need to mention before applying some changes. To better show how the inventory shifts, onsets and codas will be considered separately. Alright, now it's time. Now it's sound shifts time. First, onset ng and are dropped, making syllables optional consonant, vowel optional consonant, and coda l merges with w. 5 consonant clusters are reanalyzed as affricates and aspirated stops, yielding the onsets p, t, k, t, and t. Then coda s merges with h, and the sibilants gain palatalized allophones. Wait, I just realized I haven't done anything with the vowels yet. At this point, a and o merge with making the hush consonants phonemic. Onset h and r and coda r shift to h, zh, and r respectively. Wait, the consonant chart is now taking up too much space. Let's chart onsets and codas separately from here on. They're much better. Also, there's one last touch to the onset inventory, and that's f coming in from Mandarin loanwords. And here's how the onsets are romanized. Although w and y aren't really onsets in their own right, you'll see later that they interact with the rhymes. Now let's look at the vowel inventory again. A 5th vowel phoneme ü is loaned in from Mandarin, and the vowels are romanized like this. And yes, ü and have multiple romanizations because of allophonic shenanigans. But before I cover those, I want to take a brief detour to the codas to mention tonogenesis, since now is where coda h is lost, resulting in a falling tone, and coda is lost, resulting in a rising tone. Here are the tones side by side, and yes, syllables ending in but the g are counted as a separate check tone for reasons. And as you see, Ên²'s tones are romanized as numbers. And here are how the tones of Mandarin loans get converted. Also, remember how I mentioned rhymes earlier? Well, here are the a-less ones and how they're romanized. Alright, that was a lot of explaining at once. Take a few breaths. Anyway, alright, you've seen the a-less rhymes, so let's move on. Here are the a rhymes and how they are romanized. Alright, you've seen all the rhymes, so let's keep moving. So in the end, Ên² has a syllable structure of optional consonant, optional glide, vowel, optional final tone. And there's a few finishing phono/romanization notes. So let's see. So rhymes starting with Y or W have those letters respectively replaced with I and U when before initial consonant. So you can see that. Wu collapse just U, Yi collapse just E, W collapse just before ba, pa, or fa. Becomes O in those environments anyway. It then has a special case for the zh sound. Ji shifts to become zh. Just merges with that. Rhymes of a glide and a final consonant are indistinct from glides. Rhymes of a glide, schwa, and a final consonant. So you and you are indistinct from yo, and similar story with we and ui with way. And then finally, the u vowel gets pronounced as when before t, or sa. Anyway, that's enough explaining. Anyway, now that explaining the phonology and the romanization are out of the way, it's time for the orthography. This is Ên′ü²'s writing system, which within the language is known as Ên′ü², or Ên′ü², after the first 4 letters. The script is semi-syllabic to account for the Mandarin-esque phonology. While the letters look like a mix of Phoenician, Greek, Latin, and Cyrillic letter shapes, due to the script's ancestry in the Etruscan-esque Phoenician derivative that archaic and Yahoo used. So basically, that system had to be severely mangled into what you see here. Now let's look at the grammatical and lexical evolution. Going back to those layers of strata mentioned earlier, the inflection system that archaic and Yahoo had was discarded altogether, whereas the vocabulary gets inundated with Mandarin loanwords, whatever. One such loan, as you see here, is the word 数学, meaning mathematics, which displaces the word mathematiksa. To demonstrate the grammar and vocab of Ên′ü² in more detail, I'll do so by translating this passage from the Lorax movie, as it's the sample text for the JRGP CCC. Unlike last time where I translated this into ʟᴇsʍoʟ, the rephrasing required here is comparatively fairly tame. Here's the glass. Here's the Romanized translation. And here's the translation in Ên′ü². Alright, time to read this. Mo lo jacques se mo se pic de ʟᴇsʍoʟ dan mo she bo yo were de jar de se de jar de se shi ye he ben de ye bo mo der mer de se ta jar dan what la be ye bo li be done sun wa yo mo su de ye. Alright, that was the translation. That's the Ên′ü² video done, and that's the end of the JRGP ʟᴇsʍoʟ 2-part. Anyway, bye.